With the season now over, what is next for the Toronto Maple Leafs roster? Hey everyone, welcome to Inside the Leafs. Rob Wong, joined alongside by Toronto Sun Maple Leafs writers Terry Koshan and Lance Hornby. And guys, as of this recording, we still do not know the future of President Brendan Shanahan. There are reports circulating, of course, that the New York Islanders have asked the Maple Leafs for permission to speak with them about their vacancy within their franchise. But plenty to talk about that at a future date. So I figured today we could focus on this roster, and all the talk right now, guys, is about the futures of Mitch Marner and John Tavares. And depending on who you talk to, one or both of these guys are gone, or maybe one or both of these guys is returning. It feels like everybody has an opinion on them. We'll start with you, Terry. When you just look at those two players specifically, how do you feel about their futures in Toronto heading into next season?
Well, I don't think Marner has one. We'll see if that's true or not, but just you read the tea leaves here and his reactions after both the win the other night and then yesterday, after having time to think about it, saying he hasn't thought about his future. Take that for what you will. On the other hand, you have John Tavares heading for the exact same situation, saying that he's very optimistic that a return can be worked out. So, Marner, like as Lance and I both know, and everyone does, in the past has been adamant about wanting to be a Leaf and all this sort of thing. And that's gone now. So, I think he looks at it too, and the idea of going out on the open market and being that guy out there now that Rantanen's off, having signed in Dallas, he'll have a lot of doors open to him, and he'll be able to choose where he plays for the next 7 years. So I think that's at some point you'd think that that's going to be attractive to him because it hasn't worked out here. So, I think Marner's gone. We'll see if that's true or not. Tavares is probably a better chance he comes back. I'm not signing him for more than 2 years. I don't know if that'd be good enough for him, but I think he can't go past that. He's well into his mid-30s now, and he's not getting any quicker. And you wonder if he'll hit a wall at some point. But beyond that, the Leafs roster is still in relatively good shape. They have goaltending, they have good defense, and you still have three excellent forwards, if those two depart, in Matthews, Nylander, and, of course, Matthew Knies. So, there will be changes regardless. That there always are. But I think we have to keep in mind that the roster is still in pretty good shape.
I would say the Mitch Marner era is probably about to leave us. The only two things I would say that might work against that theory would be, one, the Leafs take a hard look at how 100-point guy is leaving, and we better have a plan B set up as far as that goes. And secondly, we all know Mitch Marner is a very, very emotional player, and I don't, and Darren Ferris, as Terry well knows, is a guy known for letting his guys go to free agency and test the waters and all that. But Marner's quite emotional, and I would be really surprised if he doesn't have at least personal second thoughts about moving on. Of course, it's to be decided financially if it's best for his his family. He's going to go where the most money is and all that. But I think he does have a very strong attachment to Toronto, and if there's any, if there's any chance of a reconciliation, I guess, to the next 6 weeks going up to July 1st, and that, I'm sure both sides would like to explore that. It just doesn't seem that that's possible right now, but I just think the Leafs have to have something else in mind, and of course we know it's not a super duper free agent market out there for scorers, as I mentioned, Rantanen coming off the board. Tavares, of course, a very interesting situation. But you know what, John? He's been well paid. I don't think he's, especially when you consider his playoff contributions, I don't think, or lack thereof, that he's in a position to hold the Leafs over a barrel for any amount. It would be great if he could come back and maybe play a third line role. But I would not extend him any further than, as Terry said, maybe 2 years, and certainly not expect more than a limited third line role for him at that. We all know the season can change, and he's kept pretty good shape and all that kind of thing. I just don't know if the Leafs have can develop another center somewhere, or produce from in-house, that they may look another direction than John to be the second line center.
The one thing I'd add to the Marner stuff too is, not just here today, but in the past few days, all this conversation about breaking it up and him leaving. We're talking about leaving a core of a team that hasn't made it past the second round. And it's only, or I should say, he's only played in the second round twice. we're not breaking up a Stanley Cup winning band here. If he was on, I just think when he looks at it and says, okay, it's been a good run here. I know what Lance, what you're saying with him being emotional, all that, and that tie, but almost the other side of it, the way he's been treated in the market by a lot of the fan base and everything, and he's had some things that happen on social media. At some point, any human's going to look at it, no matter your attachment, and go, enough's enough. This is just because he goes anywhere else in this league, doesn't matter where, it's not going to be the same, not even close.
Yeah. Well, they just, as I say, they want to get back. They got to think about production to get them back in the playoffs too. Not that can't be replaced, but that's just something.
Well,
they have
I guess to that I'd say too. The Leafs could do that all they want, but all Marner has to say is, "I'm not coming back." So you're gonna have to go get that anyway.
Well, Lance, when it comes to Craig Berube, it was a pretty successful first season for the new Maple Leafs head coach, getting his team into the second round, not ultimately where they wanted to end up. But how do you review his first season behind the bench?
Well, you know what? You're going to have to look at everything was fine. If you could erase maybe 2 or 3 periods in games 5 and 7, then there wouldn't be all the talk we're having today. You know what? It was a great season. He left his stamp on the team. Brad Treliving gave him a very good roster to work with. They got past Ottawa. They were one overtime goal away from really putting the pressure on Florida and possibly sweeping them. I don't know if that actually would have happened, but you know what? He's got to like a lot of the things he's seen, but maybe we've seen his eyes opened a little bit. Certainly, he knew the reputation of the core four coming in and their and their difficulty in getting it done, especially at clutch time. Now he's seen it, and wouldn't surprise me if he goes to Brad Treliving and supports anything Treliving says about moving out Marner or just adding some more heart. Let's remember, this guy won a Stanley Cup. He knows about players who can get the job done. And I think he probably had to be a little bit disappointed in what he saw from a very, very well-paid nucleus of this team that failed to get it done for him, as they did for Sheldon Keefe and to a degree for Mike Babcock.
I don't think there's any doubt about that. Disappointment for sure on his part. And, overall, I think you 100-plus point season under Berube, like it had been under Sheldon Keefe, but done differently. You done with more of a defensive structure. And I believe and agree with Berube when he said the other day, yesterday, that they don't get away from their structure in those games against Florida, perhaps the outcome is different, or certainly implied that. I don't know if he used those exact words, but getting away from the structure that they had played with for so long really hurt them in the end. And doing it against the defending Stanley Cup champions is going to kill you every time anyway. And sure enough, it did. So the point of that is you had to get away from something that you were doing well, and they did it well for a lot of the year. And, it's not just Berube, of course. I think a large part of that, certainly beyond the blue line, goes to Chris Tanev and his impact. Mm-hmm. And we see it. We saw why Lance all year, why Treliving was so hot to trot on getting Tanev, last season, and at the deadline didn't happen. And then he does get his rights and ends up signing him last, end of last June into July, and a great move for the Leafs. So that part in tandem with Berube's philosophy and the buy-in. I mean, here we are talking about the core, and they didn't get it done and everything, but Berube's right too. Those guys all had to buy into what he wanted for it to work, and they did
for a large
from the beginning.
Yes,
but like we said, it's still not enough at the end, and you have to kind of figure out how to get over that hump, even though it is a second round hump now and not a first round one like it has been for so long. So I certainly think Berube worked, for that first year, definitely.
If I had a nitpick, I'd say they still need a little bit of work on that power play to, make it more consistent.
Well, yeah, but I mean, the power play was top 5 or 6 in the second half of the season. In the playoffs, you're going to have to find a way to beat an aggressive Florida Panthers forecheck, right? Especially when you don't get that many of these things. I mean, how many penalties were in Game 6 or Game 7? Was there one, I think?
No.
So they're
Leaf minor for too many men.
That's right. Yeah, so it's not like these things they're all at a premium. So you have to make them count. But I'll be curious about that next year. I mean, if Marner does in fact leave, never mind Tavares, then clearly you're not going to have a 5-forward power play anymore. Certainly not in the first unit.
Yep.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. It's always a interesting off season, and this one will definitely be one of the more interesting ones in Leaf land. As always, leave your thoughts in the comments section below. For Lance Hornby, Terry Koshan, and Rob Wong, thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you next time.